Since childhood, my younger brother and I have depended on each other. In my sophomore year, a heavy blow of fate descended without warning, and my younger brother unfortunately contracted leukemia. In order to raise the astronomical medical expenses, under the coercion of life, I helplessly embarked on a wrong path. However, during the darkest period of my life, I unexpectedly encountered the true love of my life. But when I wanted to return to the right track, I found that everything was so difficult, as if I had fallen into an endless quagmire and was unable to extricate myself. One day in my sophomore year on campus, I was somehow driven to pick up a bottle of water from a luxury car parked nearby. My name is Zhang Dandan. At that time, I had just turned 20. It was an age full of youthful vitality, yet I was overwhelmed by the burden of life. My younger brother Zhang Yuan contracted leukemia half a year ago. This sad news was like a bolt from the blue, adding to the misfortunes of our already not well off family and plunging us into a deeper predicament, waiting for a suitable bone marrow match. Although the difficulty is slightly easier than winning the lottery, it is only a little bit. The hope is still slim. During this long waiting process, my younger brother's medical expenses were rapidly consumed like flowing water. The speed of burning money was even faster than that of burning paper. In order to earn as much money as possible, I had to take on 3 jobs every day, exhausting myself. Even so, I only dared to eat a cold steamed bun to satisfy my hunger, just to save more money for my younger brother's treatment. Watching my younger brother weakly waiting for a glimmer of hope in the hospital, I felt extremely helpless, as if I had fallen into the abyss of despair. Just then, I got into that luxury car that changed the trajectory of my life and completely altered my fate. The drinks placed in the car corresponded to different prices. An ordinary bottle of water was worth 300 yuan, black tea was 500 yuan, and Red Bull was 800 yuan. Under the coercion of life, I helplessly sold my virginity at a low price. After the transaction, that bossly unexpectedly stuffed 3,000 yuan into my hand. With a satisfied smile on his face, he said that he was very satisfied with this transaction and asked me to contact him often in the future. Fortunately, later I learned that this was already the lowest price for a virginity transaction. In this misfortune, there was at least a glimmer of consolation. Many girls around me also embarked on the path of escorting. Some of them did it to pursue material enjoyment, while others did it to seek excitement. As for me, I made such a choice just to let my younger brother survive. In my heart, my younger brother's life is above everything else. Time passed in a hurry. In the blink of an eye, it was the second semester of my junior year. Finally, I received an extremely good news. Xiaoyuan's bone marrow match was successful. However, after the joy, the cruelty of reality was once again in front of me. The high-cost surgery required 200,000 yuan. Over the past year, I had been living frugally, saving every penny. With great effort, I had managed to save 50,000 yuan, but the remaining 150,000 yuan had become a huge problem, standing in front of me, weighing me down. In desperation, I decided to borrow money from Li Jia. Li Jia was the benefactor I had a transaction with when I got into the car back then, and he was also my only client. He was the person in charge of a large-scale supermarket. At 40 years old, he had rich experience and was fairly kind to me on weekdays. He never mentioned his family situation, yet he never deliberately hid the wedding ring on his hand, which filled me with doubts about his identity. Mr. Li, I know the amount of money is a bit large, but please rest assured, I will definitely try my best to pay you back, I said cautiously, with a hint of nervousness and anticipation. Li Jia remained silent for a long time. After smoking 2 cigarettes in succession, he finally spoke slowly. Dandan, don't do such transactions with others anymore. I'll keep you. The words keep you were like a sharp blade, piercing my eardrums painfully. My lips unconsciously pursed, and my heart was filled with bitterness. Mr. Li, I really don't want to do this for a long time. Moreover, I don't have anyone else to turn to. From the initial simple money, trading relationship, during the process of getting along, I gradually developed some trust in Li Jia. But I knew very well in my heart that this kind of life was definitely not what I really wanted. As long as I could get through this current difficulty, I vowed to work hard to make my life return to the right track, back to those poor but hopeful days. After hearing my words, Li Jia's eyes flickered slightly. Soon, he took out a stack of money and casually threw it on the bedside table with a wave of his hand, his attitude becoming somewhat cold. That's what I mean. It's not convenient to lend you money. I can give it to you monthly. After all, sometimes I'm not free. His attitude and words made me feel an unprecedented coldness. It seemed that the tenderness of the past was gone, and this deeply hurt my only remaining and pitiful self-esteem. No, I gritted my teeth and firmly shook my head. What? Afraid of leaving a stain? Does an escort girl still have self-esteem? Li Jie's words were like a heavy hammer, hitting my heart hard. I stared at him in astonishment, and all my illusions about him were shattered in the face of the words escort. It turned out that in his heart, I had no value at all. I shouldn't have been so rash as to ask him for money. That night, I was in a daze and didn't know how I ran out of the hotel. Even so, I still tightly held the wrinkled 300 yuan bill in my hand. That was my only dignity and hope. 3 days after returning to school, a senior named Chen Meng took the initiative to find me. She was dressed in famous brand clothes of Chanel and Armani, with heavy makeup and a very delicate appearance. She didn't look like a girl in her early 20s at all. That such a glamorous person would take the initiative to approach me, who was plainly dressed, made me very surprised. I even couldn't believe that I could have such a friend. Dandan, don't look at me being so glamorous now. In fact, I'm also living on loans. The words of the senior surprised me. Senior, we're just poor students. Will there really be people willing to lend us money? I asked doubtfully. From Chen Meng's mouth, I learned about the abnormal form of usury nude loans. She vigorously promoted the advantages of nude loans, as if everyone was using this method to solve economic problems. At the moment of getting the money, I was overjoyed and wept. My heart was filled with hope for the future. I knew that my younger brother was finally saved. As for the high repayment amount, I comforted myself that as long as I worked hard, everything would be hopeful. However, those nude photos taken during the loan process were like a time bomb hanging over my head, making me often feel uneasy and fearful. But I still gritted my teeth and told myself that since I had already done escorting, what was a nude loan? My younger brother Zhang Yuan's surgery was extremely successful. The bone marrow donor was a university associate professor named Yuan Qing. He saved my younger brother's life, but did good deeds without leaving his name. It took me great pains to finally find out his identity. Just looking at the 2 words Yuan Qing, I felt an indescribable sense of beauty, and my heart was filled with gratitude and respect for him. After finishing the relevant matters of my younger brother's surgery, I took the carefully prepared supplements, fruits, and a 10,000 yuan gratitude payment, and came to the school where Yuan Qing taught. It was a sunny afternoon. He was giving a class to the students in the classroom. I carried big and small bags and stood quietly outside the window watching him. I never expected that, as an associate professor, he was so young, only in his early 30s. He had neatly combed short hair, a pair of round-framed glasses on his tall nose, and his whole person looked fair-skinned and refined. He was lecturing with a serious expression, his body straight, and his movements were neat and elegant when he turned around to write on the blackboard. After this food chain breaks, his voice was deep and magnetic, and he spoke in a gentle and persuasive manner, like the sound of nature, which fascinated me. Suddenly, he turned his head inadvertently. At the moment I saw his face, it seemed as if the whole world had lit up. Yuan Qing seemed to be surrounded by a soft white light, and there was only him left in my eyes. In this way, I stood outside the window and listened quietly for a whole class. Finally, the class bell rang, and the students quickly gathered around him to ask questions. I, on the other hand, stood awkwardly at the door, not knowing what to do. He patiently answered the students' questions, with a gentle and warm smile on his face all the time. At that moment, I saw the greatness and selflessness of a teacher. Looking at him, a strong sense of inferiority suddenly welled up in my heart. In my life, I had never felt so dirty. Student, his voice rang in my ears. I should have turned around and run away, just left the gratitude gifts in his office. However, at the moment Yuan Qing walked towards me, I seemed to be frozen and unable to move. Student, excuse me, he said politely. Sorry, this is for you. Like a fool, I put down the things and then turned around and ran. My heart was beating extremely fast, and I was too nervous to say more. In fact, I could clearly have explained, sincerely thanked him on behalf of Zhang Yuan, and then presented the gifts. That would have been more decent, but I didn't have the courage to do so. The next time I met Yuan Qing was on the Sunday of that week. That day, in order to pay off the loan, I dressed up carefully and was going to work as a hostess in a bar. As soon as I went out, I saw Yuan Qing. He was wearing a black windbreaker, and he looked more youthful and handsome than that day. Zhang Dandan, he called me, and I was wearing a red cheongsam, with my long and slender legs showing on the side. At that moment, I really didn't want to meet him at this time. My heart was full of embarrassment and unease. Subconsciously, I tightened my coat, stepped on my slender high-heeled shoes, and trotted over quickly, softly calling out, Professor Yuan, I'll take the gift, but you take the money back. His voice was calm and gentle. I lowered my head, like a child who had made a mistake, filled with inferiority in my heart, and didn't even dare to look him in the eye. You'd better take it. You saved my life. I really don't know how to repay you. You can use this money to buy some supplements to take care of your health. I stammered, my eyes fixed firmly on my toes, looking extremely constrained and impolite. Student Zhang, you almost got me punished for accepting bribes. If the school hadn't investigated clearly, I wouldn't have known how to find you. There was a hint of helplessness in his tone. I'm sorry, I really didn't know what to buy at that time. I said guiltily, well, it's normal for kids to make mistakes. You can take the money back. He said forgivingly, thinking that I had already caused him so much trouble. I didn't dare to add to it anymore, and quickly took the money back. He was such an upright person, and for me, this money could just pay off one period of the loan. Then I'll go. After saying that, I felt extremely stupid. I had tried to do a good deed, but ended up causing trouble. I just wanted to leave immediately and stop embarrassing myself. I turned around and ran, but unexpectedly, I sprained my ankle, and my whole body fell heavily to the ground with a thud. Student Zhang. He quickly got out of the car, helped me pick up the things that had fallen all over the place, and then helped me up. At this moment, I finally summoned up the courage to meet his eyes. The only thought in my mind was, he is so good looking. Where are you going? I'll give you a ride, he said softly. That day he drove me to the bar. Before getting off the car he asked, why do you come to the bar to work part-time? I didn't hide it and frankly told him that it was because my younger brother was sick and I urgently needed money to pay for the medical expenses. After hearing this, he silently drove away, but not long after, he came back and asked me for my phone number. In the following week he didn't contact me. I thought about him in my heart, but I also knew that someone like me with a disgraceful past didn't deserve to think about him at all. Suddenly one day, he called me and said that there was a part-time job opportunity in the library, with a remuneration of 100 yuan a day and settlement every half a month. When I heard his voice, my mind went blank, and I just kept agreeing. On the first day of working part-time, I spent an hour just on makeup and changing clothes, looking forward to seeing him. Unfortunately, during the half month of my part-time job, he didn't show up once. I received a salary of 1,500 yuan, and summoned up the courage to call Yuan Qing, wanting to invite him to dinner. Oh, maybe some other time. I'm a bit busy recently. His voice sounded a bit cold. Originally, I thought I was special. He left such a good opportunity for me, so he must have a crush on me. But his coldness woke me up instantly. I suppressed the disappointment in my heart and said, okay. If I were a clean and pure girl, I could have boldly confessed my love to him, but I wasn't. That night, I drank and cried bitterly, making up my mind to let go of my feelings for Yuan Qing. Half a month later, he called me again. Student Zhang, can you do simple house cleaning? Yes. My hourly worker has resigned. Would you like to come? I'll pay you 100 yuan an hour, working 2 hours a day. I wasn't afraid of hard work, but I was afraid that I would be infatuated again. When I was sober, the pain of longing, but not being able to have was really torturous. I gritted my teeth and said, sorry, I don't have time. When I said these words, it felt as if the light in my world suddenly dimmed. Okay. From then on, we completely lost contact. During that period, in order to pay off the loan, in addition to going to school, I had to take on several part-time jobs every day and could only sleep 4 hours a day. Summer vacation arrived, and there was relatively more time. I started thinking about taking on more work. There was a temporary job on the construction site that required climbing high-to-wind wires. Such a dangerous job, I still took it. As long as I could earn money to pay off the loan, I was willing to try anything. My younger brother finally got out of the hospital. I was overjoyed to pick him up. Looking at the healthy Zhang Yuan, I thought of Yuan Qing again. I had always wanted to repay his kindness, but because of my cowardice and inferiority, I had missed many opportunities. I regretted it extremely. When he said that his family needed someone to clean the house, I really should have gone to do it for free. I was trapped by my own feelings and self-directed a play. In his heart, I must be an ungrateful person. After settling my younger brother, I summoned up the courage to call Yuan Qing. Does your family still need someone to work? He hesitated for a moment, and his voice sounded a bit tired. Yes. From that day on, I became his hourly worker. But I told him that I didn't want money. I just wanted to do my part to repay his kindness. Later I learned that his mother suffered from Alzheimer's disease. When the disease flared up, she made a lot of noise and had scared away several nannies and hourly workers. No wonder he was always so busy, while I was so selfish before, hiding from him because I was afraid of getting hurt. After working in his house for half a month, I changed from an hourly worker to a full-time nanny. I was diligent and patient, allowing him to have more time to focus on his work. As the time of getting along increased, our relationship gradually drew closer. He no longer called me Student Zhang, but affectionately called me Dandan. When he called me like that for the first time, perhaps it was just an unintentional act, but I was so excited that I couldn't fall asleep all night. Because I was too excited, I thoroughly cleaned his house again. In a blink of an eye, almost a month passed. That day, Yuan Qing came back very late, with a look of joy on his face. I'm going to get promoted, he said happily. That's great. I'll cook a few more dishes to celebrate. I was also happy for him. After I finished cooking, my phone suddenly received a message. It was a reminder to pay off the loan. Since I became a full-time nanny, I didn't have time to do other part-time jobs. There was still a 5,000 yuan gap in this month's loan. Dandan, let me help. Yuan Qing's voice suddenly came. Hearing his words, I was startled and quickly put away my phone. At that moment, I was extremely nervous, as if my disgraceful past would stain the purity of his heart. At the dinner table we had a few drinks. He told me that he donated the bone marrow simply to save people, so he chose to keep it a secret. When the school found the money I gave, they initially thought it was a bribe. Later, after investigation, they learned the truth and commended him throughout the school. A few days ago, the city's education bureau also learned about this matter and was going to promote him. That's great. I've always felt guilty about this matter, I said. After having enough food and drink, he took out a card and handed it to me. Dandin, you don't owe me anything. This is your salary. Take it with a clear conscience. No. We agreed that I wouldn't take money. I quickly refused. He adjusted his glasses and earnestly reasoned with me, saying that if I didn't take it, he wouldn't be able to feel right. Helplessly, I could only accept the card first and secretly decided in my heart that no matter how difficult life was, I wouldn't touch the money in this card. When he no longer needs me, I will return the card to him. Perhaps I can compromise in front of others, but in front of him, I must maintain my self-esteem. However, within a week, his mother suddenly passed away due to a heart attack. I accompanied him all the time, helping him get through that difficult period. A few days later, after the funeral was over, he sat in his mother's room from dusk till dawn. He rested his head on my lap, and I held him in my arms. Finally, he couldn't hold back his tears and wept. The next morning, he said that there were too many memories of his mother in that room, and he decided to move. Since I was about to start school soon, and he was going to move to a place closer to his work, it seemed that the only connection left between us was this card. Yuanqing, can we meet? I'm about to start school, I asked cautiously, not daring to mention the card for fear that he would refuse to see me because of it. Not recently. His answer made me suppress the pain in my chest. I had tried so hard, yet everything seemed to have returned to the starting point. Do you have something on your mind? I can be with you, I said. Nothing. I'll come to your school to see you in a few days. In a blink of an eye, I started school. He had never lied to me before, but that in a few days never materialized even after a month. To pay off the loan, I worked desperately, so much so that I fainted due to hypoglycemia. But I never touched the card he gave me. At 3 o'clock in the morning that day, I got off work from the bar. In order to earn more money, I had been selling beer. There was no other way. This job brought in money quickly. To close the deals, I had also drunk quite a bit, reeking of alcohol. I was about to sneak back to sleep through the back gate of the school. Dandin, I've been waiting for you for a long time. In the dim light, Yuanqing's figure suddenly appeared, and I froze instantly. You ignored me before, I said, feeling a bit wronged. Sorry I'm late, Zhang Dandin. I took some time to calm down, and I've realized that I like you. I must have drunk too much. Otherwise, why did it feel as if fireworks were bursting above my head? Now I have a real boyfriend, and it's Yuanqing. He treats me extremely well. He doesn't let me take on part-time jobs anymore, and has even handed over his salary card to me. Whenever he needs money, he comes to me for it. I also moved to my boyfriend's new place. Yuanqing gets up early every day to take me to school. Before I get off the car, he always gives me a gentle kiss. He is currently in the promotion review stage, and is extremely busy. Even so, every day when he picks me up from school, he brings me small gifts. Flowers, cosmetics, bags, clothes, shoes, jewelry, things that girls like. Although he doesn't quite understand these, he always makes a special effort to find out and give them to me. He likes to call me baby, and I'm happy to call him Lao Yuan. We get along so harmoniously that we seem to be made for each other. He is an excellent cook. Every time I see him bustling around in the kitchen wearing an apron, I feel as if I have accumulated the merits of several lifetimes to meet him. I am already very satisfied with my current life, but Yuanqing gave me an even bigger surprise. After the final exams, he came to pick me up with a diamond ring. Zhang Dandin, marry me, he said sincerely. I'm still young. At that moment, the great joy was overwhelmed by my past. I felt extremely guilty. Those dark choices in the past made my spine tingle with fear. I can't wait. Looking at his sincere and even somewhat embarrassed expression, I slowly uttered one word. Yes. I put on the diamond ring and became Professor Yuan's fiancé. During that period, I was so happy that I would wake up smiling in my sleep. It turned out that after all the hardships, happiness really could come. I also became more and more confident. Yuanqing and I had been together for exactly 1 month. Today is both his birthday and the day he was hired and promoted. Yuanqing left for school early in the morning, and I carefully decorated our home and went to his school with the carefully selected gift. I was determined to give him an unforgettable birthday. When I arrived at his school and walked past the teaching building, the students around me all cast strange looks at me. But at that time, my mind was full of Yuanqing, and I didn't notice these at all. I was only thinking about how happy Yuanqing would be when he came out of the administrative building and saw me. However, when I reached the downstairs, I found a lot of people gathered around the bulletin board. Had the notice of Yuanqing's promotion been posted? I was overjoyed and pushed my way through the crowd. But when I saw what was posted on the bulletin board, my heart sank to the bottom instantly. What was posted on the bulletin board were actually the bed photos of my escorting days. Although not fully exposed, I was lying on the bed disheveled, and the man hugging me had his face hidden. But I recognized him at a glance. It was Li Jie. What chilled me to the bone was the accusation letter against Yuan Qing next to it, which clearly stated that Yuan Qing was morally corrupt, soliciting college students, and having a chaotic private life. In an instant, I felt as if all the blood in my body had frozen. I rushed forward desperately, frantically tearing up those photos and the accusation letter. Countless voices were shouting in my heart. Yuan Qing must never see this, absolutely not, never. The originally surprised shouts of the surrounding students suddenly stopped. I turned around in a panic. Just then, I saw Yuan Qing standing behind me, his face full of anger, his eyes like knives, staring at me intently. That look seemed to instantly strip away all my courage and efforts. My legs went weak, and I slumped to the ground. At that moment, I understood that I had completely lost him. We got into the car silently and drove home. He drove like the wind all the way, and I was so scared that I didn't dare to breathe, not knowing what to say at all. When we got home, he closed the door. His eyes, ablaze with anger, were already bloodshot. After a long time, he suppressed his voice and asked, "Tell me, someone is spreading rumors about you, right?" His voice was trembling violently, yet it was like a whip, lashing my heart severely. I could no longer hold back, and the tears I had been suppressing burst out. I shook my head with great difficulty. He suddenly raised his hand towards my face, but finally, he slapped himself hard. "Yuan Qing, don't do this." I held him, truly feeling Yuan Qing's intense trembling. "Zhang Dandan, when my mother passed away, I had already told her that you were going to be my daughter-in-law. I'm sorry to my mother." He cried like a helpless child, and I was filled with self-blame, wishing I could cut myself into pieces. "Yuan Qing, give me some time. I will give you an explanation." The next day, before he got off work, I left quietly. I had a lot of things, all bought for me by Yuan Qing. Many of them hadn't even been used. I took these things back and deposited the money into his salary card. The salary card, the diamond ring, all the love he had given me, I returned them all. Then, I rushed like crazy to Li Jie's workplace, angrily questioning him why he had done such a despicable thing. The moment I saw Li Jie, the slap that Yuan Qing had refrained from giving was viciously slapped on my face by Li Jie. "How dare you come here to cause trouble? Are you courting death? Why did you harm Yuan Qing?" I shouted angrily, while he looked completely unconcerned. "He's too showy. How dare he compete with my big boss's son for a position? He doesn't deserve it." Of course I had to fix him. Li Jie had a sneer on his face. "Dandan, this is all thanks to you. I sent someone to investigate him, and happened to find you. I have quite a few intimate photos of you too. I didn't expect they would be so useful." I clenched my fists tightly, filled with hatred. I really wanted to die with this despicable person. I hated myself. Although I had voluntarily taken that wrong path back then, I still couldn't forgive his ugly deeds now. "Li Jie, you must apologize to Yuan Qing. You're framing him," I said through gritted teeth. "Don't forget, you have a wife. Aren't you afraid that I'll tell your family about your affair?" Li Jie's face froze instantly, and then he said viciously, "You have no evidence. Don't spout nonsense here. Zhang Dandan, I advise you not to play with fire and burn yourself." Suddenly he sneered again. "Dandan, come back to me. Yuan Qing is such a fool. He has no money and no power. He's still being played by me. Were you blind when you left me for him?" I couldn't bear it any longer. I picked up the coffee cup on the table, and smashed it hard at his head. Hearing his scream, I turned around and rushed out of the coffee shop. How could a scoundrel like him be compared with Yuan Qing? After leaving Yuan Qing, life seemed to go on as usual, but everything had changed. When I was with Yuan Qing, I gained 10 pounds. In the week after leaving him, the weight quickly dropped back. After nearly a week of continuous insomnia, I finally came up with a way to make amends. On the forum of Yuan Qing's school, I openly admitted that I was an escort girl, cheating men out of their money, and Yuan Qing was just one of my many targets. I sacrificed my own reputation, just to let Yuan Qing return to a peaceful life. I thought that when everyone knew he was deceived, those insults might turn into pity. To make others believe, I not only admitted it frankly, but also pretended to be shameless. So what? I earn money by my own ability. Don't be jealous just because you can't have it. This matter quickly caused a huge stir, and became a hot social event. The media reported it extensively. For a time, whenever anyone mentioned an escort girl, they would immediately think of me. My goal was achieved. Almost all those who had originally attacked Yuan Qing turned to support and sympathize with him. The school also clarified things for him, and he was able to resume his normal teaching position. But I had lost all the face of the Zhang family's ancestors for generations. As the public opinion continued to ferment, the matter got bigger and bigger. The school couldn't bear the harassment of complaint calls, and finally asked me to drop out. But for Yuan Qing, I had no regrets. He was such a good person, and deserved to live a good life. 21 days after we separated, he appeared at the restaurant where I was working. With my bad reputation, if I was recognized, it would definitely affect my work. To make a living and pay off the loan, I could only temporarily do odd jobs and wash dishes in the dirty and damp kitchen. I tried my best to keep myself busy, so that I could spend less time thinking about Yuan Qing. The feeling of missing him was really tormenting, and I constantly reminded myself to be strong. The wind chime at the back door of the restaurant rang clearly. When he appeared in front of me, I felt as if I were in a dream. "Dandon, you've lost weight." At that moment, a glimmer of joy welled up in my heart. Yet immediately I realized I was being overly greedy. I was instantly jolted awake. I couldn't implicate Yuan Qing any longer. In an instant, the emotion of despair engulfed me completely. "You should leave. This isn't a place for you." Hastily, I covered my face with my hands in rubber gloves. I was in a terribly slovenly state at this time. In order to earn money to pay off the debt, I hadn't slept a wink the whole night yesterday, and I looked extremely haggard. "Dandon, I heard that you were expelled from school." His hands, those of a teacher fair and strong, suddenly grasped my already moldy rubber gloves. "Mind your own business." I flung his hand away roughly, my heart filled with the sole hope that he would stop paying attention to me. My life had already become as abominable as mud. Since all my previous part-time jobs had dismissed me, I was no longer able to repay the loan. The debt collectors called every few hours, hurling insults and threatening to expose my nude photos. I absolutely couldn't implicate him. Yuan Qing had no idea that the girl he once loved deeply was actually a bottomless abyss. "I know that you did all this for me. My life has returned to calm, but without you, my heart can never heal again." His affectionate words made me feel that even if I sacrificed myself, I would have no regrets. Yuan Qing let me go. That day, he quietly watched me wash a sink full of bowls, and then silently withdrew. Looking at his departing figure, the moment he turned around, my tears could no longer be contained and gushed out. After that he never came again. I completely deleted all his contact information and changed my job. As long as there remained even a glimmer of hope of being with him in my heart, it would make me feel excruciating pain. These days, I lived in a shabby rental room. Since I didn't have enough money, I could only rent a bed space. At 4 o'clock in the morning that day, I was on my way home from work when I encountered the debt collectors on the road. To be honest, it was a momentary lapse in judgment that led me to choose nude loans. But I really never expected that the original 150,000 yuan loan had now ballooned to 350,000 yuan. I had been desperately paying it back, yet it was still far from enough. They surrounded me in a tight circle. The leader held a baseball bat in his hand, looking as if he was about to smash it on my head at any moment. I was so frightened that I huddled in the corner. "If you can't pay back the money, then pay with your body. Anyway, aren't you used to selling yourself? Let us also have a taste of a college student." "What college student? She's already been expelled. She's just a social loafer, a public bus that anyone can get on. Hurry up, 2 of you go first in the first round." I was trapped so tightly that I couldn't move. I was extremely thin, weighing only 80 jin. I couldn't run away, nor could I fight back, and there was no way to call for help. In a panic, I picked up a stone from the ground. I knew very well that I was no match for them. If necessary, I could only use this stone to end my life. I absolutely didn't want to suffer any more humiliation. Just when I was on the verge of despair, a miracle happened. Yuan Qing suddenly kicked down the person who was grabbing my collar and tightly shielded me behind him. He said to me steadily, "Don't be afraid." These simple 2 words struck my heart forcefully. "Yuan Qing, run. There are so many of them. Damn it, who the hell are you? Mind your own business. Playing the hero to save the beauty can get you killed." When Yuan Qing saw that it was the leader speaking, he directly kicked him. The outcome was beyond my expectation. 10 minutes later, those debt collectors were all hugging their arms, hunched over, crying and howling as they fled. Only then did I know that he was actually a black belt in Taekwondo. He said with a hint of panic, "Sorry, Dandon, I'm late." I had a narrow escape from death. Finally, I couldn't hold back and threw myself into his arms, crying my heart out. He gently stroked my hair and softly coaxed me. "It's okay now." Gradually I calmed down. "Who are those people?" he asked softly. My psychological defenses completely collapsed, and I no longer concealed anything. "Loan sharks, Yuan Qing. I got involved with them, and I can't pay back the money." He didn't ask any more questions. He took off his coat and draped it over me, gently comforting me not to be afraid, and then helped me into the car. "Problems that money can solve aren't problems. How much do you owe? I'll pay it back for you." He had already suffered so much for me. Even though I was deeply touched by his love, I didn't want to drag him into this quagmire. I shook my head desperately, trying to rush out of the car, but he stopped me. "Girl, maybe we can give less as betrothal gifts. Anyway, all my money is yours." By the moonlight, I saw the clarity in his eyes. I knew that he wasn't lying to me. Even though he had lost his temper and said harsh words to me before, I had never doubted his character. Because from the very beginning, Yuan Qing had been my younger brother's savior. "No, it's too much. You'll be dragged down by me." Although Yuan Qing was a mature and steady man, at this moment, the way he pledged his loyalty in front of me was like a child happily presenting his most beloved candy. "Dandon, I've resigned and set up a private laboratory. I don't want to be controlled by others anymore. I want to protect you." Yuan Qing took out his phone and showed me his first income, which was a total of 520,000 yuan, more than enough to pay off my nude loan. I'm not worthy. I was once an ESC. His warm lips stopped the words that were about to come out of my mouth. His passion completely melted the last wisp of ice in my heart. After the kiss ended, our breaths were slightly rapid. How foolish I was. I should have thought earlier that someone as hard-working and enduring as Dandan would never have taken that wrong path, if not forced by her younger brother's serious illness. Yuan Qing's understanding of me, the love and tolerance he gave me, were like a beam of light, giving me the courage to step out of the darkness. Okay, Yuan Qing, I'll consider this money as a loan from you. I will definitely pay you back. I was tormented by the nude loan to the extreme. Since Yuan Qing was willing to accept me, I was willing to spend my whole life repaying this kindness. He gently put his arm around me and placed a kiss on my forehead. Silly girl, have a few more children for me. Consider that as repayment. With his such sincerity, how could I have the heart to refuse? A smile bloomed on my face, and I threw myself into his arms. I paid off the nude loan in one go. The huge stone that had been weighing on my heart finally dropped, and I could finally happily prepare for the wedding with Yuan Qing. I originally thought of keeping everything simple, just setting up a few tables of banquets, and inviting relatives and friends to have a meal. But Yuan Qing insisted on a grand wedding. He said he wanted to make me the most beautiful bride in the world. The wedding was held at the most expensive Spring Garden Hotel in the city. Every detail was filled with the love between us, carefully prepared by both him and me. The beautiful flowers, the mellow wine, the melodious violin music, the romantic hot air balloons, and the relatives and friends of both sides. This wedding was like a grand dream that Yuan Qing wove for me. Brother-in-law, you saved my life. I'm entrusting my sister to you. Now I don't owe you any favors. Zhang Yuan is now basically recovered and in good health, with a ruddy complexion, fully committed to his studies. After that operation, his life has restarted. Xiaoyuan, you're my little matchmaker. Don't worry, in the future with your brother-in-law here, I'll take care of you. Yuan Qing is extremely generous as a brother-in-law. He patted Zhang Yuan's shoulder with a smile and stuffed a thick red envelope into his hand. Thank you, brother-in-law. Because Yuan Qing had been my younger brother's savior, my relatives and friends were very satisfied with him. I concealed my past experiences, and Yuan Qing openly introduced me to his close people. My reputation for being virtuous and taking good care of Yuan Qing's mother spread far and wide, making his family and friends have a good impression of me. Amidst the blessings of everyone, I wore a white wedding dress. The long train seemed to sweep away the haze of my past. I walked towards him with a pure heart, as if it had been washed, filled with joy. Wife. He put a diamond ring on me and softly called me in my ear. My heart trembled slightly, and I softly replied, yes. I finally became his wife. Looking back on the scene of our first meeting, I increasingly felt that he was an angel sent by heaven to save me. From now on, I will definitely love life. After graduating, I will work hard. I want to earn a lot of money and spend it all on my husband. Let's congratulate this couple on their successful union. Just as we were kissing, my nude photos suddenly appeared on the big screen at the wedding scene. The photos scrolled one by one. I was naked holding my ID card, showing the front, side, and back. Every detail of my body was presented in front of the relatives and friends of both sides with astonishing clarity. In an instant, the wedding descended into chaos. Some people even took the opportunity to raise their mobile phones and start taking videos and photos. I stared at everything around me, feeling as if the world was spinning, and my breathing became extremely difficult, as if I were suffering the punishment of slow slicing. Plunging from paradise to hell in an instant, boundless fear completely enveloped me. Yuan Qing had already given me a chance, and I knew very well that this time I would not be forgiven again. I clearly saw that the light in Yuan Qing's eyes faded instantly as he looked at me. He clenched his back molars so tightly that his lips were bitten into bloody marks. His eyes were terrifyingly red, and tears welled up in his eyes. Yuan Qing, my loan was a nude loan. I'm so sorry. I really had no other choice at that time, I said with a sobbing voice. He frowned and looked at me, his eyes full of unfamiliarity. After a few seconds, he seemed to wake up from a dream, pulled out the power plug, and turned off the screen. I was dragged by him to the lounge, and he only left me with a back view. Dandan, let's separate for now. I had betrayed his trust. I should have made everything clear long ago. But in order to hold on to this hard-won happiness, I eventually chose to be cowardly. I've already paid off the loan. I don't know why these photos are still leaking out. He suddenly stood up and punched the wall heavily. In an instant, his fist was dripping with blood. Zhang Dandan, I said, let's separate for now. Because of that unforgettable past, I had been extremely self-abased. In my world, the sunshine was given by him, and all my courage originated from Yuan Qing. Now that he was going to leave me, I suddenly felt that I had lost the courage to carry on. I understand. I left the wedding scene in utter despair, dragging my long wedding dress, my makeup completely ruined by my crying, like a wandering ghost. I wanted to figure out why those nude photos were still leaked out even though the loan had already been paid off. There must be someone who did it deliberately. I called my senior Chun Meng, but she prevaricated and even refused to meet me. I wanted to seek help from my family, but after the farce at the wedding, when my family answered my call, they could only sigh and couldn't say any words of comfort. I had lost my studies and my job. I was all alone and didn't even know who was harming me. I curled up in the rental house, living like a stray dog. 3 days after the wedding farce, Yuan Qing appeared. Dandin, here's this card for you. Even if we're separated, I don't want to see you living in a difficult situation. He had a stubbly beard, and he looked as if he had aged several years, looking extremely haggard. I really wanted to hug him, but I was afraid that he would dodge. In the end, I just pushed away the hand that was holding the card. I don't want it. If you don't want me as a person, then don't come to me again. He seemed to suppress the anger in his heart, but was ignited by my words. Zhang Dandin, you little wretch. I think I've been good to you. Can't you just let me have some peace of mind and accept this card? Yuan Qing, do me a favor. I don't want the money. I'm so scared being alone right now. He wanted to ease his conscience, and I wanted someone to rely on. In the past, I was used to looking up to Yuan Qing. It was he who gave me the opportunity to get close to him. At this moment, we were equal. We were two lonely souls who needed to redeem each other. As for the money I owed Yuan Qing, I would definitely pay it back bit by bit. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to rest in peace even after death. Okay, I'll help you. Since I paid off the loan, under Yuan Qing's supervision, I signed a contract, and the loan sharks never harassed me again. However, they completely disappeared, and I couldn't get in touch with them at all. Now the only clue I could pursue was Chen Meng. I told Yuan Qing about my situation, and Yuan Qing immediately hired a detective agency to investigate Chen Meng. At the same time, Yuan Qing set about investigating the mastermind behind the wedding scene. Although there were limited outdoor surveillance cameras, with his meticulous thinking and extremely high IQ, he still found a person named Huang Mao. Yuan Qing resorted to both threats and inducements on Huang Mao, and finally made him confess that the mastermind behind the scenes was actually Li Jie. This was something I had never expected. Li Jie didn't know about my nude loan. How could he have my nude photos? What puzzled me even more was that just because I hit him once last time, he actually wanted to ruin my life. Dandin, don't worry. The detective agency found out that Chen Meng once sent an anonymous letter to Li Jie's wife. It might be related to this matter. I trusted Yuan Qing, and his investigation ability shown this time really opened my eyes. Okay, let's go to Li Jie with the materials. Li Jie was not having a good time at this moment. His wife was divorcing him, and the management right of the supermarket had been taken back. In order to avoid the divorce, Li Jie hid in a rental house. As soon as the door was opened, a decayed smell rushed out. Li Jie, you were the one who did that at my wedding, right? Li Jie was shirtless, wearing a pair of baggy shorts. His hair was in a mess as if he hadn't washed it for several days, and his beard was also unkempt. He lit a cigarette. It was me. So what? You little slut, how dare you talk to my wife? As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed over suddenly and reached out to strangle my neck. Fortunately, Yuan Qing blocked in front of me in time and punched him to the ground. You might have misunderstood. The person who wrote to your wife wasn't Dandin. Yuan Qing threw the evidence of Chen Meng at Li Jie, and then pulled me away. He said that such scum would be punished by law. If we stayed there any longer, he might not be able to resist committing a crime. I believed him. I believed everything he said. Yuan Qing was right to let Li Jie go. Li Jie was so crazy that he blocked Chen Meng at the school gate and beat her half to death. Chen Meng wasn't someone to be trifled with either. She confessed that she had wanted to embezzle the repayment money, so she framed Li Jie. It turned out that the mastermind behind the nude loan was actually Li Jie. He manipulated Chen Meng and several others to specifically deceive female college students into nude loans, and made huge profits from it. If Li Jie hadn't been too harsh on his subordinates and kept reducing the commission, Chen Meng wouldn't have been dissatisfied. After being beaten, Chen Meng, with only a breath left, directly reported Li Jie to the police and accused him. After Li Jie was imprisoned, I felt that the sky in the city seemed bluer than ever before. I was a victim of this nude loan case. Because I was deceived into the loan, I borrowed 150,000 yuan, but repaid more than twice that amount. The police returned Li Jie's illegal gains to me. I made an appointment with Yuan Qing, planning to pay him back a part of the money first. After paying this part, with my future job, it wouldn't take long to pay off the rest. He didn't show up for the appointment, but he contacted my family. Dandin was deceived, and she's suffering a lot. Xiaoyuan, take good care of your sister. When I heard these words, tears streamed down my face. Even though my family might be negligent sometimes, Yuan Qing had always been so good to me. I had never been proactive in front of him before. But at this moment, I also longed to have the right to love him. I wiped away my tears and called Yuan Qing. Yuan Qing, I love you. Don't leave me, okay? He didn't respond, but he sobbed uncontrollably on the other end of the phone. After a long time, he choked out a word. Okay. The voice seemed to be right next to my ear. I raised my head and unexpectedly found Yuan Qing standing right in front of my door. He hugged me tightly in his arms and kept repeating, "You're back. I won the bet. I knew you would truly come out of it and walk towards me." At that moment, I realized that he had never given up on me. He was just waiting for me to stand up step by step and regain my new life. The end.